Do you remember the toys you used to play with in the 70s? I'll probably have to make this a three-parter because I had several. Starting with Weebles. Do you remember Weebles? Those glossy egg-shaped characters you could spin and smack about and they would always pop right back up. Kind of a metaphor for our lives. And weren't they really heavy? Which made for dangerous ammo against an older sibling. Seriously, couldn't you like bust out a car window with those things? Another favorite of mine was the Light Bright. Remember when you would use up all the stencils or they'd start tearing because of the overuse of them? You'd have to come up with your own designs, but you could only remember flowers, so just like spell out words like the name of your grade school crush or your new favorite curse word. When the original light bulb burned out, couldn't we use outdoor Christmas lights to replace them? And it seemed like there were a million pegs in the beginning, but the peg count would get smaller and smaller with each use. Where did those fuckers go? Many of mine would end up burrowed in the carpet, and I would only discover them when I stepped on them barefoot. Those pointed tips were no joke. Eventually, you would hear the sound of them making their way up the vacuum cleaner. I vividly remember the sound of light bright pegs being sucked up the Hoover. And then we have the Etch A Sketch, which I was never really good at. And I always had that one meticulous Virgo friend who had much more patience and ample dexterity. I did have one though, and I think I broke it because I desperately needed to see what was inside. Do you guys remember when the Pet Rock came back into fashion? Mid-70s? It was the sort of toy that said, you're not getting anything and you're gonna like it.
I got a rock.
I liked mine. I named it Herb, which was oddly after the slimy character on WKRP in Cincinnati. And then we had the Spirograph. That was fun. But I always remember tearing the sheets of my paper with the tip of the pen, because if you were too delicate, the ink would never make its way onto the paper. I was probably too rough. But I also had an older sister with a greater sense of color and advanced motor skills. So the Spirograph was a fleeting fascination, being the only boy and the youngest child. Super competitive. Then we had the Rubik's Cube. I had a few of them actually. One of them always had the loose stickers because obviously I tried to just re-sticker the whole thing. Who was I trying to impress? I wasn't showing it off to anybody. And then there was a version of the Rubik's Cube where there were 2 or 3 middle pieces that were completely loose because of course once you discovered that you could break it apart, you did. There were more than 2 ways to solve a Rubik's Cube. And do you remember Hungry Hungry Hippo? I mean, you had to have family or friends to make that toy usable. Well, I guess it was a board game. Eventually, I would lose all the original marbles that came with the game and try to use my Purple Crown Royal bag of cat eyes, pissed off that they were too big to actually go down the hippo's gullet. Weren't the heads removable? I swear I remember moving their heads and then alternating the colors to the bodies. Why's it gotta be all pink? Then there was the Easy Bake Oven. I never had one of those. I was a boy. It was the 70s. The hell, I was a latchkey kid. I was probably using the real oven by the age of 6 or 7, so I don't think I was missing out on anything there. And of course, I had a Viewmaster, the prehistoric cursor to VR, a little slideshow projector inside a manually triggered spy goggles, typically red. But I only remember getting the starter pack of discs. I don't think we were rich enough or I had interest enough to get any extension packs, so I'd probably just view the same disc for hours inside my own thoughts inside my own head. I remember being on a pogo stick, but I don't think we actually owned one. But I think my favorite toy of all time was the Merlin. I think it was called Merlin. I think it came in red or beige. I think I had both. It was shaped like a big chunky phone, and it had like 10 to 13 games on it. And the only one I can remember is that mini version of Simon, that pattern memory game. Seriously, I played with Merlin until it died, until it broke, or until I discovered beer, which is when I turned 13 and will have to be saved for another video. I don't remember. Whatever.